Morning, everyone. My name is Emily Quarles-Mowrer, and I would like to welcome you all to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Good to see all of you on this sunny morning. We have all these other things we could be doing outside with all that's coming up and the sun coming down. So welcome to all of you who ventured out to be with us here in the sanctuary. Welcome to all of us who chose to join us on Zoom, and welcome to those who are visiting our service on a time delay online. We are so happy you have chosen us. This morning we have music played by Carly Shaw. We have Rick Dusky being our technology lead, and I lost my, okay. So for over 50 years, the UUFP has been a liberal religious voice in the Pottstown area. As UUs, we believe that science and faith are not either or, we can have both. We believe that we can and should honor the wisdom of the past, even as we acknowledge that not learning the lessons of the past may mean repeating them. We believe that there are still plenty of questions out there to explore, and perhaps most importantly, we believe that no one is outside the circle of justice and compassion. We hope that we refresh your spirit and your heart and your mind as we once again come together to look at our 7 guiding principles. We come together this Sunday morning and every Sunday morning, not because we share a creed, but because we promise to support one another on our journey. Our services are different each week, but the loving kindness in this place remains the same. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, wherever you are in states today, we're glad that you came. Now is the time for announcements. So if you have an announcement to share, please come on up and make sure to use the microphone and introduce yourself just in case not everybody knows you.
Hi, America, and the newsletter deadline is this Friday, which I think is 24th. And if you have anything for the newsletter, send it to me. Oh, and there was a gap in the email. There might have been a problem. You might have sent something to me. I only got stuff from Alan. So if anybody else sent me something, there might have been a gap of time when that forwarder wasn't working. So if you think you sent something to me and you're not Alan, then send it again.
Good morning, I'm Miranda, and I just want to remind people that next week we're having what's called a 102 session here, and that's for people who are, first of all, interested in the path to membership. We require that you have taken session 101 and 102. But also it's for anyone who wants a refresher on the history of Unitarian Universalism, and especially in session 102, we talk about the history of this place and this community and our political structure and our committees and just a lot about us, as well as a little bit of general UU history. Anyone is welcome. Old members, new members, visitors. It will happen after the service, after the Sunday service, and you'll be able to go in and grab some coffee and goodies, and then join us for this class. So come if you want. Let me know that you're coming. It's nice for us to know, but if you want to just come, that's fine. You don't have to tell me. See you then.
Morning, I'm Sue, and I just wanted to open up the aesthetics committee to anyone that was interested. Right now we have 3 people as members of that, and I know there was a couple people that were also interested. Whether you want to be a small part or help out more, you can just see me after the service. Thanks.
Great, thank you, everyone. We'll light our chalice this morning with the words of Paul Sprecher. We light this chalice. We light this chalice for the web of life which sustains us, for the sacred circle of life in which we have our being, for the earth, the sky, above and below, for our mother and for the mystery. Even in this time when technology is so vital in providing us with connection, it can still be a distraction. It can distract us from one another. So at this point, I'd like to remind you to put your notifications on silent and then take a moment, take a breath, rest your eyes, listen to the sound of the chime. For opening words this morning, we have an excerpt from a poem by Wendy. It's from a Timbered Choir, which is this really cool book that he wrote of poems that inspired him about the woods. And he wrote one every Sunday for a couple of years. It starts in like the 1980s and goes all the way up to when it was published in the 90s. This is from poem 5 from 1985. How long does it take to make the woods? As long as it takes to make the world. The woods is as present as the world is, the presence of all its past, of all its time to come. It is always finished. It is always being made. The act of its making forever greater than the act of its destruction. It is a part of eternity, for its end and beginning belong to the end and beginning of all things. The beginning lost in the end lost in the beginning. It reminds me of that Ouroboros, that snake devouring its own tail. So now we will have our first hymn. It's number 76 from Singing the Living Tradition, for flowers that bloom about our feet. And now it is time for a story. So whether you are young in body or in spirit, you're welcome to come to the front of the sanctuary and join us. Get some breath in.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Miss Ruby, and I have our children's story today. It was given to me by my friend Valerie, who loves to read this in her house. The story is called All the World, and it's by Liz Garten Scanlon. Rock, stone, pebble, sand. Body, shoulder, arm, and hand. A moat to dig, a shell to keep. All the world is wide and deep. Hive, bee, wings, hum, husk, cob, horn, yum. Tomato blossom, fruit so red. All the world's a garden bed. Tree, trunk, branch, brown, climbing up and sitting down. Morning sun becomes noon blue. All the world is old and new. Road, street, track, path, ship, boat, wooden raft. Nest, bird, feather, fly. All the world has got its sky. Slip, trip, stumble, fall. Tip the bucket, spill it all. Better luck another day. All the world goes round this way. Table, bowl, cup, spoon, hungry tummy, supper soon. Butter, flour, big black pot. All the world is cold and hot. Spreading shadows, setting sun, crickets, curtains. Day is done. A fire takes away the chill. All the world can hold quite still. Nanas, papas, cousins, kin, piano, harp, and violin. Babies passed from neck to knee. All the world is you and me. Everything you hear, smell, see. All the world is everything. Everything is you and me. Hope and peace and love and trust. All the world is all of us. And I think that the kids will go back to the classroom and talk about those things about hope, peace, love, and trust, and how all of us are interconnected. So with that, let's sing the kids back to the verse. The world is all of us.
That's so true. So now is the time for the morning offering. When searching for words for this morning's offering, I came across a reading where Erica Hewitt reminded me that when we give, we say yes to something that we value. That's not just true on Sunday. Jane Claire Kirby wrote for Forbes in 2018, remember that what you spend is what you value. So no matter who you are or what you have, your resources are always limited, not just money, but attention and care, and especially time. And the fact that you come and you spend your precious resources with us and on us really makes a difference. So in the spirit of trust and generosity, we gratefully accept this morning's offering. Our reading this morning is another reading from my favorite resource right now, which is Braver Wiser on the UUA website. This one is from Karen G. Johnston, and she wrote it in 2019. It's called Inviting Our True Attention. She starts with a quote attributed to Lee. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. She writes, I call the tall bush on the back patio burning bush because in the autumn its leaves are a fiery red. Does anybody else have a burning bush in their backyard somewhere? Yeah. They're really pretty in autumn. All winter long, I overlooked 3 uninhabited nests inside it. For months and months, I could have perceived, but didn't, what was in plain sight. I was delighted to finally see them today, but not surprised. In the summer, I love watching the birds fly into and out of the safety of that leafy, branchy mass, catching glimpses of them hopping from ground to woody perch and back again. I'm curious and a bit embarrassed that I hadn't noticed the nests until now, until springtime, when the branches are about to burst forth with green. I called my partner over to point out the carefully crafted twigs, each one with a purposeful home of its own, and one with a bright green strip of discarded plastic cording as decoration. He too is delighted. He too had not noticed them. What else is there in this world that my hustling and bustling have barred me from sensing and seeing? What else has my oblivion, self-induced or socially constructed, hindered me from perceiving? My guess is that it's not only delights such as these nests, but violence too. That's within perception's range if only I gave it my true attention. Acts of exclusion or discrimination, impacts of systemic oppression, they're right there before me. I don't always perceive them. I may have been taught not to see them, but they're there nevertheless. What else have I missed while moving through this world? How might I wipe away the dust clouding my vision and be available to reality as it truly is? Spirit of life and love, may my senses be attuned to that which is just or in need of justice, to that which is compassion or is in need of compassion. May I perceive not only my reality, but the reality of those I love, those whose company I cherish, and the natural world around me. Now we'll move to hymn number 60, In Time of Silver Rain. I have a history of choosing very difficult tunes, and this is one of them. You guys did really well sight reading that one. Chose that one because by Langston Hughes. Didn't really pay attention to what the music was. And I thought, I'm like, hey Carly, how weird is it? All right, so a place of our own. When my husband and I first came to Pennsylvania, our very first objective was to get a place of our own. Now, in part, it was because we had two gigantic Rottweilers and nobody wants to rent to someone with two gigantic Rottweilers because first, they're gigantic dogs and second, they're Rottweilers. But it was also because we really wanted to have a place to settle and to put down roots and to feel like we could be in the world in a place. So full confession, I actually meant to read this entire book, The Nature of Nature by Eric Sala, and use it to inspire this particular service. And I got most of it read, but not all of it. So we're just gonna get the parts I got. But I picked it out in part because it's a beautiful book. It's a hardcover, it's got like the really pretty graphics in it. It's got pleasantly thick paper. It's got glossy photos with beautiful scenery in the middle. And it's like, oh, all of these places that they're vanishing, but I want to visit them. And the writer, Eric Sala, or Amrik Sala, he is really knowledgeable and he's really good with words. He paints these glorious pictures of these places that I may never get to see, or that some of them have disappeared since he was there last. He is a National Geographic explorer and conservationist. He founded the National Geographic Pristine Seas Project in 2008, which studies and protects the wild places in the ocean, and it helps the damaged places in the ocean to bounce back. As an avid National Geographic traveler, I'm pretty sure that Mary was the one who recommended this book to me and got it on my TBR list. So time got away from me, but I'll share the highlights. Well, first off, Sala speaks of the wildlands on the Isle of Corsica and under the surrounding sea with this brilliant clarity that makes me long to visit and smell that mix of wild herbs and fresh sea air. He talks about how there's different stratas in each section of the island. So if you were looking from above and you saw where all of the different plants and animals lived, you would see just bands of different ecosystems going all the way from the mountaintop down into the ocean. He talks about how there's different species of kelp at different depths of the ocean, and how the different species all look different. So some of them, they look like twisted olive trees, and some of them look like palms with the big fronds going out. And there's different fish that live in these different little places in the sea. And he describes this in a way that makes me think, there is this entire world under the ocean that we know less about than we know about outer space. And it's right here with us. So another thing that Sala described was, he described the work of early biologists. And he described it in a really easy to understand way. For example, he spoke of Russian scientists whose name I'm going to butcher right now. So any Russian speakers, I'm very sorry. It's Georgy Franzshevich Gauss. And his work on species competitions for scarce resources. Now, Gauss actually did a whole bunch of studies. The one that specifically struck me, though, was the study that he did with two similar strains of paramecium, those little single-celled organisms that have the little flagella on the sides. Flagella, I might be confusing that with a different type of movement organ. Cilia, thank you. So there was two different strains. There was P. caudatum and P. aurelia. So when they're growing alone in the tube, they both thrive. But when they grow together, P. aurelia drives P. caudatum into extinction in about 2 weeks. Isn't that crazy? If they're by themselves, they are perfectly fine, and they grow to this certain amount of numbers of individuals, and then they just stay there. It's stable. But if you put one in with the other, one disappears. Now, according to Wikipedia, Gauss published the results of his studies in 1932. And to break down his findings into the simplest terms, he found that only one species can occupy an ecological niche at a time. So if there are two species that are both competing for exactly the same food and are both eaten by exactly the same predator and are both vulnerable to the exact same environmental hazards, then one species will be more efficient, one species will be less efficient, and the less efficient species will be driven to extinction. This finding was later called the competitive exclusion principle. Now, that's something that we kind of intuitively understand, competitive exclusion. And we still rely on competitive exclusion in many ways. So think about a modern farm. When you're driving down, I drive up to Quakertown and I drive through a bunch of farmland. Or if you're driving down to Lancaster, you may drive through a bunch of farmland. And what you'll see rows and rows and rows and endless acres of corn, or rows and rows and rows and endless acres of soybeans. And if there's one plant in the middle, you'll be able to see the one different plant because everything else is the same. So, and if you're looking at the edge of the field as you drive by, you'll notice that there's a barren strip of soil where there's nothing growing at all. And then you'll see on the side next to the highway where they stop spraying and suddenly it's this bright variety of wildflowers and clover and grass and all the different, like the bracken that comes up, all of the things that are tucked away by that thin barrier. To this day, conventional wisdom still sees any other plant that tries to grow with the plants we want as a competitor, as a thief of resources. Now, we humans sometimes think that because we can follow a single thread in that great tapestry of life, that therefore we understand all of the threads in the tapestry of life, and that every thread must be kind of the same, that one thread that we understand must be the same to the whole picture. You may remember a couple of months ago, I brought in a book by Suzanne Simard. She works with trees. And she works with trees that have been clear cut. And they're trying to plant new trees. So you know how you buy those, like the recycled paper towels. And they say, yes, not only are these paper towels recycled, but they are earth sensitive because we replant. Well, a lot of times those replanting, those tiny little baby seedlings that they put in, they don't make it. And part of the reason that they don't make it is because we rely so strongly on this idea of competitive exclusion that we don't put the tiny saplings near the mother trees. We don't put the tiny saplings near any other trees. We think, oh, well, if it's near the mother tree, then that large tree is going to take all the resources, and our trees that we want to harvest aren't going to grow. And if we allow those pines to grow next to the birches, well, those birches are going to take all of the nutrients, and then our pines won't grow. Well, Simard's work has shown that that is a wrong-headed way of thinking. Trees need each other to grow. Those mother trees, the big, huge pines, if you put a seedling next to the big pine, that big pine will colonize the seedlings with a special kind of fungus, and then it can exchange nutrients with the seedlings and help the seedlings to grow. And if you put a birch and a pine together, and they have those same kinds of fungi next to each other, they can actually exchange carbon and they can exchange water over this mycelium barrier so that they can grow together. They prosper when they're together and not when they're all separated out into their little types. Gauss's work and the work of other biologists indicate that the number of members of a single species will not grow indefinitely, the thing I talked about just a little earlier, but will rather reach a saturating population where the number of individuals level off to match the available resources. So just like those test tubes where the different parameciums. He also did the same research with 2 different kinds of yeast. So the yeast that makes beer and the yeast that makes yogurt. He had them in 2 little separate tubes, and then he would test them and see how long that they would last and how if they would have like exponential growth, keep growing and growing and growing, or if they would just kind of level off. And everybody leveled off. Well, according to the United Nations, on their World Population Day article from July of 2022, the world is going to reach a saturation population of humans around 2080. And that'll be approximately 10.4 billion people. To paraphrase Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, 10.4 billion people means 10.4 billion opportunities to live dignified and fulfilled lives. And I understand and agree with that sentiment in the abstract, but my brain has a lot of trouble encompassing the reality of 10 billion other people, other vessels like me, who are filled with hopes and dreams and fears and thoughts and an entire internal world. Each one of us is a multiverse. And there are 10 billion out there? A couple of years ago, before COVID, my husband and I drove our daughters down to the Baltimore Zoo. They wanted to see elephants, and the Baltimore Zoo is the closest zoo with elephants. And now I'm going to digress a little bit about elephants because I love them. So when I was little, a lot of zoos had elephants, and most of them could only have like 1 or 2 because elephants are gigantic and they take a lot of food and they take up a lot of space. But we found that elephants in captivity live much shorter lives than elephants in the wild. So an African elephant in the wild will often live to be between 60 and 70 years old. And an African elephant in a zoo rarely lives to age 50. For Asian elephants, back when I was a kid, when every zoo had an elephant, most of the Asian elephants only lived to be 19 or 20. And in the wild, an Asian elephant usually lives to be about 45. So luckily the numbers have rebounded, and the more modern data says that now the new rules on elephant care, where there's only a couple zoos that have them and they do a really good job. Now most elephants that are in captivity at least live to be about 45, it says 44.8 years old. But that's just another example of humans thinking that because we understand one strand of the web, that we understand the whole web. So anyhow, my girls wanted to see a real elephant. So we drove down Route 100 all the way down to the end, and we caught Route 1. And the whole time I was looking out the window because I can't read while I'm in the car. It makes me really sick. So I just have to look out the window the whole time if everybody else in the car is like reading or sleeping. And I was looking out and seeing like houses and people and more houses and more people. And I thought to myself, every town and every exit off this highway and every random railroad crossing has people. All these people with lives and concerns and big and small multiverses that don't have anything to do with me. These places, these people. How amazing is that, that there are so many of us? Even the partially uninhabited places. Oh, I'm sorry, just that little stretch, Philadelphia to Baltimore. But even the partially uninhabited places are farmland and not forest. You may remember from your high school history class that Pennsylvania means Penn's Woods. So all of our beautiful rolling hills of farmland used to be forest. It may be hyperbole, but I read once that when European settlers first reached these shores, a squirrel could actually run the length of the state from tree to tree to tree to tree to tree and never touch the ground. I actually heard in a different place, also probably hyperbole, but that a squirrel could get from the Atlantic to the Mississippi without ever touching the ground. Now, I'm sure that they would have had to cross the Susquehanna somehow, so that might not actually be true, but can you imagine that many trees and how big those canopies must have been? So every time I see a new housing development, I go up, I'm sad, because now instead of trees as far as the eye can see, we have houses as far as the eye can see. So I'm sad for the foxes that used to run through the tall grass in search of the field mice and voles. And I'm sad for the deer that lost their refuge and their food source. And I'm sad for the wildflowers that'll be replaced with the tame grass that never is allowed to grow past 4 inches high, so it never gets a chance to set seed and complete its life cycle. I'm sad for the tall pines and the sugar maples whose lives are cut short when we put in those houses that we create out of their bones, whose children are never going to be allowed to grow. But on the other hand, what was the first thing I did when I came to Pennsylvania? I bought a place of my own. Who am I to say that someone else shouldn't have a place of their own? I love having a home. I love having land, even if my gardening skills are spotty and wild blackberry canes are eating my holly tree. I'm not an arbiter of other people's dignified and fulfilled lives. If I can live safe and warm in a single-family home on a half-acre lot, safe from the superstorms and the road tornadoes and the excessive heat, and if I can have the ability to buy whatever produce I want, no matter what time of year it is, did you know these are supposed to be seasonal? You know, I've already displaced all those foxes and deer and coyotes and skunks, although not the skunks, there's one living in my garage that my dog would dearly like to displace. But who am I to call out someone else for wanting what I have? The thing is that no matter how much I wish that everyone could have exactly what I have, if everybody has that half acre and there's 10 billion of us, there's not going to be any nature. And we need nature. Study after study has proven it. These are just 2 points from the Guardian's Richard Booth's article from 2014, 10 reasons why we need more contact with nature. So the first one was, at the University of Michigan, researchers demonstrated that after just an hour of interacting with nature, memory performance and attention spans improved by 20%. In workplaces designed with nature in mind, employees are more productive and take less sick time. We need nature. That beautiful view out there is medicinal. Pennsylvania researchers found that patients in rooms with tree views had shorter hospitalization, less need for pain meds, and fewer negative comments in the nurse's notes compared to patients who had views of brick. So, you know, just a comment. If you're ever in the hospital, request a room with a view of a tree so you can get out faster. There's a reason that those restful pictures that our computers choose as screensavers and backgrounds are scenes of the natural world. Does anyone else have that? The computer pops up and it automatically has like a picture of something amazing, like the Sahara Desert with all the rolling sand dunes. And then you click on it and it takes you to the page that says, oh, this is what you're looking at. It's this part here. We're drawn to appreciate the beauty of wide open spaces where others of us are not. Although, as much as I love to look at nature from in here, I don't necessarily appreciate being out in nature as much as I probably should. Last summer, I tried to sit outside in a blanket a couple of times on the grass in my yard to read. And every insect in my entire yard decided that, hey, I'll sit on the blanket with you. There were the ticks and the ants and the mosquitoes and the gnats. I was like, where are they all coming from? So I toughed it out for a bit and then retreated to the blessedly insect-free interior of my house. It's probably not entirely insect-free because the indoors has the screens and the windows, but the spiders and the house centipedes are living on something. Of the population of the United States, about 2.6% lives in New York City, not in cities, just New York City. You're thinking, okay, 2.6%, that sounds like a normal number, right? But it sounds like a much bigger number if I say, out of every 38 people in the United States, one of them lives in New York City. According to the University of Michigan Center for Sustainable Systems, right now about 83% of the US population lives in cities. And the number is expected to increase to 89% by 2050. That's around the time that the world population will reach about 9 billion. The land area considered urban is expected to increase by about 15% during the same time period. But if urban areas are growing so fast, why does it feel like the suburbs are rising up like mushrooms after the rain to strangle us with those treeless pots and big beige houses? Well, I don't know why that is, but living in an urban setting is much better in terms of carbon footprint. My sister has a much better carbon footprint than I do. She lives in New York City. She has a little apartment and she walks everywhere, because she doesn't like to take public transit anymore. So if she has to go, I don't know, like 3 miles uptown, she'll walk it. Just, and I'm like, 3 miles? Are we there? But walking in public transit, much more efficient than driving a car everywhere. Henrik Sala wrote in his book, Nature of Nature, the word ecosystem comes from the ancient Greek word oikos, meaning family, and also house. Well, our ecosystem, our blue boat home, our extended family that includes the whole web of creation, depends on the choices we make about our common house. He also says in there that we have become the asteroid, referencing that asteroid that wiped the dinosaurs off the face of the earth. But Sala makes a case for protecting our remaining ecosystems as an economic and existential necessity. It really is true. We don't really think about how it would be economically necessary to make sure that our planet stays whole. But if we don't have a planet, if we don't have our little blue boat home, not like there's a planet B. Barry Lopez's book, Arctic Dreams, which I didn't actually read, I just found a quote in Sacred Earth, which is another lovely book. I inherited this one from my mom, as you can see from all the flags. She also loved this book. He points out there is more at stake than economic realities. He writes, whatever evaluation we finally make of a stretch of land, no matter how profound or accurate, we will find it inadequate. The land itself has an identity of its own, deeper and more subtle than anything we can know. And our obligation toward it then becomes simple, to approach with an uncalculating mind, with an attitude of regard, to try to sense the range and variety of its expression, its weather, its colors, its animals, to intend from the beginning to preserve some of the mystery within it as a kind of wisdom to be experienced and to be alert for its openings, for that moment when something sacred reveals itself within the mundane. And you know that the land knows that you're there. Peter Parker's wise Uncle Ben once said, with great power becomes great responsibility. Well, we humans have a lot of power in this world. Each of us does, even when we feel like we do not. We have the power of our daily choices. We have the power of our elected government. We have the power of yes. Just like Erica Hewitt said, where we spend our finite resources is how we show what we value. So we do have the power to say yes to protecting the natural world, the place that we call our own. Right, so. Now let's join in singing 1064 Blue Boat Home. It's a crowd band favorite. And this one is in a teal hymnal. Now, please join me in reading out the chalice extinguishing words. He extinguished this chalice flame, but not the light of truth, for the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. He is the carefully and in our plans until we are together again. I just realized that for the 50th time, I said truth instead of wisdom, so I changed it in my script. So we're going to close our service, our online portion of our service, with another excerpt from Wendell Berry's A Timbered Choir. This is poem 2 from 1995. The best reward in going to the woods is being lost to other people, and lost sometimes to myself. I'm at the end of no speaking wire to spoil my goods. I send no letter back that I do not bring. Whoever wants me now must hunt me down. Something wild, and wild is anything beyond the reach of purpose, not its own. Wild is anything that's not at home in something else's place. This good white oak is not an orchard tree. It is unbespoke, and it can live here by its will alone. lost to all other wills but heaven, wild. So where I at most am found, I am lost to you, presuming friend, and only can be called or answered by a certain one or two. And now we'll close out with Spirit of Life, and then we'll move to Joys and Sorrows.